Welcome to the Divine Quotient podcast. Around here, we go way beyond small talk. We're talking soul to soul with truth, purpose, and what it means to live a spirit-led life. I'm Tilde, the creator of the Divine Quotient. Get ready for real stories, deep laughs, and those aha moments that light you up from the inside out. Welcome to the Divine Quotient podcast. Around here, we go way beyond small talk. We're talking soul to soul with truth, purpose, and what it means to live a spirit-led life. I'm Tilde, the creator of the Divine Quotient. Get ready for real stories, deep laughs, and those aha moments that light you up from the inside out. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Divine Quotient podcast. Around here, we go way beyond small talk. We're talking soul to soul with truth, purpose, and what it means to live a spirit-led life. I'm Tilde, the creator of the Divine Quotient method. Get ready for real stories, deep laughs, and those aha moments that light you up from the inside out. My guest today is Peter Laughter, leadership, raconteur, and keynote speaker, trading control for abundance. Yep, that's his fancy way of saying, I talk for a living. As a keynote speaker and leadership transformation raconteur, he bridges the gap between organizational theory and practical implementation. Through award-winning storytelling, as a 3-time Moth Story Slam winner and TEDx speaker, and evidence-based insights, he helps executives navigate disruption by showing how leaders can do the following 3 things: release the shackles of command and control, access collective wisdom of their teams, and transform culture to thrive in rapid change. His signature talk is "The Pyramid Has Collapsed," turning the age of disruption to an era of abundance. Please welcome Peter Laughter. Hi,
So
Peter.
glad, so glad to be here, Tilde. Thank you so much.
Oh, super excited to have you on. We met briefly, well, via LinkedIn, actually. We just
Yes,
had a brief encounter on a thread of a mutual connection, and then ended up meeting for a brief time, and you agreed to come on the podcast. So
and here we
just
are.
love to
Glad to be
see you.
here. Yeah.
Here we are. Um, so first off, the raconteur. Tell me where that title comes from, what it means, because maybe some people don't
It's
know what that means.
Raconteur is a fancy way of saying storyteller. So I loved telling stories, and it was always something as a kid I was really enthralled by. It was a little bit of a family tradition. My mom is from the South, and I was raised up with her telling me stories, and it's something that I always loved. And there is I found myself probably, gosh, over 25 years ago, I was telling a story at a party, and I realized that there was about 10 people who were listening to the story, and they were rapt. And I thought, wow, maybe I'm kind of have some talent here. And around the same time, I learned about an organization called The Moth. I was living in New York at the time, and The Moth is a storytelling organization, and they have these things, story slams, these kind of open mic storytelling competitions. And my good friend Jessica came into town, and she had done it in Chicago and had tickets in New York, and the tickets were ridiculously hard to get, and there was lines around the block before them when they, but she invited me, and I went, and I realized, oh, I have a story that fits with this topic. And so I put my name in the hat, and I didn't think I'd get called, and sure enough, I did. And it wasn't a very good story, and I wasn't very prepared, but no one tried to kill me or throw rotten fruit at me or anything like that. And I loved it, and I just kept doing it. And I found, it was just, I think for me, my purpose in life is recognizing that humanity is deeply and profoundly connected in ways that we are aware of, in ways that we're not. I exist to lift up those connections, so they're visible and tangible in our daily lives. So we can really have the experience of being profoundly connected, that we are, but we overlook those connections. And I find that storytelling is one of the best ways to have a visceral experience of that connection. And it happens many times when I'm listening to a storyteller who I've never met, and suddenly they say something and I realize, oh my goodness, me and this person on stage, we're deeply and profoundly connected. We've never met, we're just seeing each other for the first time now, but now I see it. And not long after that, my eyes will wander a bit and I will see somebody else in the audience having the same experience. And I will realize, oh, the three of us share this connection. And in fact, when storytellers are telling a story, the audience starts to mimic the mental brainwaves of that storyteller. And so it's always been an area of connection. And as I have explored my purpose in life, what has come clear to me, the last 5 years have very much been in the wilderness, looking for how to best apply that. And I realized storytelling was there for me all along. And was
Yeah.
really the path forward. So
I love that. I love that. And I think a lot of people don't realize how powerful storytelling really is. Part of the way that I work with clients is using Ericksonian hypnotherapy. And what's different about Ericksonian hypnotherapy is that we use storytelling to access the subconscious mind and to reprogram the subconscious mind. And I was a benefactor of Ericksonian hypnotherapy by the daughter of Milton Erickson, who was the creator of Ericksonian hypnotherapy. And so I had the privilege of working with his daughter directly to heal parts of my old trauma and childhood trauma and things like that, and experienced it for myself. And I saw the power of it. So naturally, I gravitated to want to integrate that into my own methodology. But a lot of people don't realize when you tell a story, you are actually putting people in a trance, right? And so that trance, then their subconscious mind is, while their conscious is relaxing and receiving the story, their subconscious mind is taking it in. And if the story makes that impact and connection, it allows the subconscious mind to start to reprogram itself and rewire it. So I love that you use storytelling so powerfully, because it is that connection.
well, it's funny that you say storytelling puts people in a trance, and I have dyslexia and ADHD, so I was a joy as a student from my poor teachers. But there's a few things that a lot of them recognize, and I remember, you know, poor Miss Tenenbaum, bless her soul, my both first and second grade teacher, well before I was diagnosed. But she struggled mightily with me. But I remember her telling my mom when I was when she would read stories, she said it's like he goes into a trance, he's in another world. And I love stories, and that was really
Yeah.
always had me. And I will never forget when my daughter was way too young to read a book for a first or second grader. I walked into a bookstore, and there was the cover of this book, My Father's Dragon, which I had forgotten, but it was what Mrs. Upton had read to me, this series of 3 books that I just remember loving. But I saw the cover and it all came back to me,
Yeah.
and they were the first chapter books that I bought my daughter. And I remember when I read the first one, I turned a page and she put her hand on my hand and she said, "Dad, there's something wrong with this book. There's no picture on the page."
That's too
Yeah.
funny. Too funny. Well, beautiful. Um, now tell me about this talk of yours. The pyramid has collapsed. How did you come up with that title?
Well, so I think there's a few things that came together. So um, from a faith perspective, I am a Quaker, which is a very, very small religion. And we believe that there's that of the divine in all of us and is alive within us. And so everything that we believe, it's tapped into that. And so we have a non-hierarchical process. We have no clergy. We run our meetings, our business meetings, using a non-hierarchical process, one which I did not know well for most of my life. In fact, most Quakers had forgotten it. In the 60s, we became hippies and weren't all that interested in our ways of structure. And so we would focus on consensus, which is not our process. Consensus is actually, if you think about it, is actually quite violent because you're really forcing everyone to accept the least common denominator. And I was on the board of the school where I went to high school. I went to public school up until through middle school, or junior high, as they called it back then. And then my mom sent me to a Quaker school. I was not doing well. And the Brooklyn Friends School was transformational for me. It made such a huge difference in my life. And so I joined the board. I think when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, was asked to join. And as a Quaker school, you need 50% of the board to be Quaker. And the school was trying to separately incorporate from the religious body that owned it. And it was the trustees of the New York Quarterly Meeting, the Archdiocese of Quakers, and the trustees of the school desperately wanted it. And there were some real critical reasons for both parties to have it. But the body of Quakers were the ones making the decision, were vehemently opposed. And some of them were quite inappropriate in their interactions. And I realized that the people who were kind of throwing these emotional Molotov cocktails in our quarterly meeting, I grew up with a lot of their children, and so I joined the effort to repair or to handle this issue and or just to address this with this idea of being manipulative, of politicking, of playing their interest off each other. And the woman, Alice Pope, my dear friend, was like, nope, we're not going to do any of that, but do join us. But we're going to listen, and we're going to listen not to convince or to find the flaw in their argument. We're listening for the brilliance behind their objections to what we have to say. And we did that. And over a course of 2 years, we listened. And in listening, we heard the brilliance of what they had to say, even if we thought at first it was completely, bat poop crazy. And we gained trust. And at the end of the process, I remember this guy, John, long beard. He was one of the people who I felt was throwing these emotional Molotov cocktails, practically in tears, talking about our articles of incorporation, saying, I love this document. And I walked out of that thinking, my God, what did we just do? And surely we can solve the world, the ills facing the world using these tools. And it changed the way I do business. And then I had an instance in my business where I had just an intractable problem that was driving me crazy. It was causing real problems. And I had a very stupid, expensive, painful solution. And one of my employees, Becky, bless her heart, saved my life. She had very clearly saw that the problem wasn't what I thought it was. And it was much simpler. And I didn't believe her. And she got in my face and she said, Peter, what you're suggesting is a violation of our core values. I was like, oh, I can't argue with that, but I didn't believe what she was suggesting would work. And so I let her do it thinking, well, I'll just put in my dumb, expensive solution when hers inevitably fails. But it didn't. It was easy and it made everyone's lives better immediately. And it was inexpensive and it just ended the problem. And I realized fundamentally that my vision of leadership, the one coming out of command and control, that had me as the one on top, the one with the ideas, the smartest one in the room, something that is never true in any room that I go into, was destroying me. And it was causing all sorts of suffering on my part as a leader, insecurity, separating me from the brilliance of the people around me. And so I discovered something called distributed leadership. And this is the process, is a recognition that power and authority are fluid, and the process of creating structures that allow for the effervescent leadership trapped in every organization to flow freely and create value in the moment that's needed. And I was an entrepreneur in the recruiting and staffing industry for most of my career. And I don't need to tell you, Tilde, recruiting is broken. We apply the simple process of buying stuff to this immensely complex process of engaging with other human beings and
Yeah.
wonder why no one's happy. And so I left my last recruiting company. I sold that company and in 2020 and really started looking at what was next. And I tried a lot of different things. But ultimately, it was very clear that this thing that I had been doing for the past 15, 20, my entire life, storytelling, was the path forward. And I sold my home in Brooklyn, and my wife and I became nomads, looking for our next home. As I was writing this speech, and it looks at the fact that humanity has entered the most disruptive, innovative, fast-moving, and perilous time in human history. And everything that we've learned about leadership and organizational structure is incompatible with this new age that we've just entered. And our ability to survive and thrive as organizations depends on shedding this outdated concept of leadership and moving toward what I call abundant leadership. Really, which are abundant leaders, are those who understand the fluidity and nature of power and authority, and can create tools that allow for that effervescent leadership to flow where it belongs. And so I look at I tell the story of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the "I Have a Dream" speech, and how it almost never happened, to illustrate this concept of abundant leadership. And I talk about how command and control has been failing us for a long time. We've been, going bankrupt gradually, and it's about to be sudden. And how to survive and thrive in this new age. So, and that's what my talk is about. So,
I love that. I love that. And I think you're right. I think we are moving into a new era. And for me, and what I really focus on is, the divine quotient method, right? And how we've moved from sort of this IQ to EQ to now DQ. And it's not about getting rid of our IQ or EQ. It's actually the integration and bringing those things forward to live in alignment with our divine intelligence, what I call divine intelligence. And that part of ourselves that we tend to, and we have ignored for such a long time, right? That place that is complete abundance, that is complete love, that is compassionate, that is kind, and is peace. Um, and we've sort of ignored our soul for a very long time, right? And when we ignore our soul, and we tend to, it gives us a perception of the world that can be very scary and full of lack and not abundance. And so I love the fact that you're addressing that with leaders in particular. And so what have you seen has been the biggest challenge or resistance that you've seen from leadership in moving into sort of this new era?
So, and this is something that I mentioned in my talk. The only thing we know is command and control. So one of the things that I hear so often from people when I talk about this concept of abundant leadership, of distributed leadership, of pushing power and authority to the full reaches, the furthest reaches of an organization, what I hear most frequently is, don't we need people to be told what to do? And I know for a fact that's not true. And we see this all the time. I had my office when I was in New York, was in downtown, just probably, half a mile, if less, from the World Trade Center. And we were down there on September 11th. And I had the good sense of keeping my team in the office as buildings were falling down and it just wasn't safe. And we stayed in the office together and then all left together. And I'll never forget walking out of the building after walking down the stairs, because there was no power for the elevator, and seeing this white ash on this beautiful clear blue day. It looked like the sun had come out after a snowstorm. And we walked out of our office, and I remember we turned onto one big street and we saw this sea of people, and some of them were covered in ash, and some of them were, walking in bare feet because they had high heel shoes and they couldn't, walk that far. And along this journey out of downtown Manhattan, people started coming out of their homes with bottles of water and Dixie cup, offering to bring people into their homes to use the bathroom, to wash their face, to, get the dust out of their eyes. There was a man who owned a sneaker store, and he was giving women who were in high heels sneakers for free. No one told those people what to do. No one told those people to do that. They saw a need and they acted upon it. And so I know that this is there, but this idea, we're running a leadership structure, command and control, that was created thousands of years ago when sovereigns were the only ones who had access to information, and they had to control an illiterate peasants to make sure they didn't plant the wrong crops or plant them in the wrong way, and make sure everybody didn't starve, right? And it's, when you think about it, it's insane that we are using an ancient management structure designed to control armies and peasants to run modern organizations. We have vastly different sets of opportunities. We all have in our pockets these magical devices. They've got, a camera and a flashlight, and they play games, and they also connect us to the entire compendium of human knowledge, right? So we don't need this level of control, but leaders, they know nothing else. And there's certain things you can't understand until you experience them. It's like trying to explain this concept of leadership to someone who's never experienced it. It's like trying to describe the color blue to Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Homer literally couldn't see the color blue because the word blue had not yet been invented. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a revelation.
Isn't it remarkable?
Yes.
Homer called the Mediterranean dark and murky. The Mediterranean, some of the most beautiful blue you've ever seen. But the truth is he couldn't see it. He couldn't see it. And so I think that is the struggle, is those who are at the top of our corporations, many of them have ascended to that lofty position because they have this belief that only they are capable of doing it. And that belief has served them well throughout their career. It's what allowed them to become who they are, but it's not serving them now. And they know it. And they know it. And it causes tremendous stress and burnout. I think 68% of corporate leaders report high levels of stress, with some, a huge percentage of those, a third of them, saying it's extreme. And on the other side, you have 77 or 78% of employees who are checked out, doing the bare minimum, just calling it in. Right? And what they want is meaning and agency. They want to know they're working towards something that means something to them, and that they have some say in how it's applied. So on one hand, leaders are suffering because they have too much to do and they can't control everything that they need to control. On the other side, you have their employees who are desperate for more autonomy. The solution is right in front of us. It is right in front of us, but we can't see it.
Interesting. I was very fortunate. I had some incredible mentors while I was in the military, a very young age, between the ages of 19 and 23. And then shortly thereafter, I went and started working for Southwest Airlines in 1995, early 1995. And under Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett at Southwest Airlines was such a beautiful experience to be, to come into at 25, starting a new company and this whole new culture that they were creating. We had deck parties every Friday. We had, just a beautiful different ways for us to engage with each other outside of work. And their hiring process was totally different. then than it is now too. But it's what made them great, because they didn't necessarily hire for skill. They hired for mindset, right? Entrepreneur mindset in particular. And I can't tell you how, looking back now, right? Looking back now, how genius that was, and how liberating that was as an employee, to be seen, to be heard, to feel seen and heard, and the loyalty that that instilled in all of us to give back to the company. So you mentioned 9/11, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but during that time, I was an aircraft dispatcher at Southwest Airlines. That's how I finished my time there. And so, sort of the command and control for Southwest Airlines. And so, all of the flights, dispatchers scrambling to find a place for all these flights to land. But then thereafter, we realized there was a potential for the airline to not have enough money to operate, right? To go out of business. And so what did we all do? It wasn't inspired by leadership. It was inspired by the employees, where we all decided and we all offered to not get paid, for however long it took, so that nobody else would get fired. No one else would be let go, because I knew I had a job, right? I had a great paying job. But that was the loyalty and the love and compassion and kindness that we extended to each other,
I,
in that scenario.
Herb Kelleher is a genius, and I think one of, for me, the keys to abundant leaders being successful in transitioning command and control organizations to distributed organizations really lies in what Herb understood is having a defined purpose and values that come from that purpose, and running your organization from that. Because when people understand that, that is the operating system. It is not command and control, which I want to be clear, I distinguish from hierarchy. You mentioned your military service, right? So you're familiar with this idea of commander's intent, right? Yeah, is that the U.S. military has broad decision-making capability as long as you're staying within the arms of command intent. And I think General Stanley McChrystal, with his concept of team of teams, he understood that no, you can have a distributed organization within a hierarchy, right? But it's a question of creating connections within the silos and allowing for decision making at that point of connection. I'm not sure if I want a loosey-goosey structure to run a nuclear power plant, right? But that doesn't mean, that the Homer Simpsons of the world who are pressing the buttons don't see things that need to be paid attention to, don't have a say in how that needs to happen and go about things, about how to make things better, right? Their leaders are not there. They do not see it. They do not understand. And I think that is, one of the things that we have to reckon with.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to see, once Herb and Colleen left, how things changed. And once leadership changed, then the culture started to change too, because they started to do things very differently. And so that in and of itself, the productivity, may not have gone down, but the culture and the level of happiness in those employees, I still have family there. And friends there. And, it's a very different environment now.
Well, it's that's fascinating, because I think you're I mean, the thing that Herb understood about his business was it's all about reducing the amount of time that planes are on the ground, right? And he organized a pay structure that promoted that. So you would have, pilots cleaning up planes so they could get them out and moving, because everyone's bonus was tied, to that action. And their bonus was such a huge part. So, Herb created a structure that allowed for everyone to work together, that promoted this sense of collaboration. And when we go, oh, well, we need to be a much more, traditional organization, and we need to take the things that they're doing, in the past and bring them forth. Well, sure, you have an organization that might on the surface look like another organization, but it's not going to produce the magic that Southwest was
Exactly.
capable of.
Exactly. Because
And
when
he was a
sorry.
he was just a rigorous protector of those values. The story about Herb Keller that I love the most is the woman who was offended about, the flight attendants having fun with the safety instructions. And
Right.
she wrote this just outrageously angry email to her, letter to Herb saying, this is inappropriate and you should stop this. Now, fun, and it was a core value of Southwest. It led to their purpose of connecting people to the people that they love, and his response was, "We'll miss you." Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's like
Uh,
customers not always right if they want us to be
Right.
something that goes against our values.
Well,
Yeah.
and he knew he was a genius, both of them, because the overall mission was employees first. Because he knew taking care of employees would naturally take care of customers, and that naturally did happen. He was beyond his time. And I think, going back to leaders like Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett is essential to be able to see, what works, what really
Well,
works, and moving forward. So how would you say, um, what does the future look like to you?
so I think that's what's really exciting is this is an unimaginable future we're facing. And I literally am confident that it is beyond our ability to imagine. And I think that's why it's so important that organizations tap into the intelligence, understanding, insights, and capability of everyone. Because we can't do this alone. I mean, if you think about think about where we were just 5 years ago and all the changes that have happened in just 5 years. It is mind boggling, just how much has changed. And, we have everyone's talking about generative AI for good reason,
Mhm.
but no one knows how it's going to impact us. It is an emergent technology, right? It is not done forming yet.
Yep.
We have no idea, how it will, what form it will eventually take place, and how it will impact our lives. And I think with this focus, I was at a venture event, and they had some venture capitalists talking about, how everything's AI now. But what people don't recognize is AI is one of many transformative technologies that are coming
Right.
to bear, right? There's robotics, 3D printing, quantum computing, nuclear fusion, green energy abundance, private space travel, CRISPR and genetic editing, blockchain, augmented and virtual reality, you know, uh, you know, the graphene and advanced, materials, lab grown from highly from precision fermented proteins. Like all of these, are just under the surface waiting to emerge. We used to have time in between massive technological shifts like we did between the railroad and the onset of electricity. But now these waves are going to start coming every couple of years, and it will be staggering. And these waves, each and every one of them has the ability to dramatically change society and how we do business. Some of them will even change our understanding and perception of reality, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that we also don't is wave theory, right? As waves come closer and closer and closer, they start to merge and recombine, right? And right now we're seeing this. Robotics and generative AI have recombined, allowing this very, very niche and difficult technology accessible to pretty much anyone. I don't think we're prepared for just that one, that
Right.
one recombinant piece of technology. We can't imagine what, I mean, we're a couple
It's
of
almost
years.
overwhelming.
It
Right.
is overwhelming. It is not almost overwhelming. And most people aren't thinking about it. I mean, think about what will the world be like when the emergent wave of quantum computing recombines with generative AI or robotics and genetic manipulation, things that are happening right now, right?
Right.
Or when everyday entrepreneurs can bring highly innovative products to market instantly and
Mhm.
threaten entrenched competitors before they even know they exist. This
Right.
is this is a different world that you and I at this point cannot imagine. With these emergent technologies, We can just wait and wonder as they come crashing down upon us. And our only chance of making sense of it is doing it together, collectively, because it
Mhm.
is just humans can hold maybe about 6 concepts in their head at any given point. I've just mentioned about 9
Yeah,
transformative technologies with an infinite number of pieces of complexity with each one, right?
that's a stunning amount. Everything that you just mentioned, I'm like my mind is just reeling with all sorts of questions, but I really want to like hone in on this the consciousness part piece of this, right? The soul part of this. Because yes, all of these things are great, but if we're not doing them from a place of what I call alignment, right, with our consciousness, with our divinity or our soul, then it's just doing things the same old way, building businesses the same old way. Whereas if we start to do it from that place of unlimited abundance, right, where I don't need to do this, I want to do this, I want to extend this to humanity for from my heart, right? So how do you think, and because I'm seeing it in the AI already, right? So you have Chat GPT, and I recently was learned about a woman who started an AI company that's, I think it's, is it Mind Labs? Mind Lab AI or something like that. So anyway, it's more of a conscious AI, like where humanity is driving it, the morality, if you will, of or a consciousness of this AI versus a Chat GPT to where it's just gathering information, right? It's not being selective about the information that it's processing. And so it was fascinating to me to actually run into someone like that that is thinking about this future that we want to create, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see in that regard in
Well, as I mentioned earlier, my purpose in life is based on this idea that we are all of us humans, deeply, profoundly connected. And I think tapping into those connections and listening and honoring those connections is our way through, right? I think if you look at what built America as a great nation, it was this idea that we are going to focus on individual self-interest. And I don't think I'm ever going to become completely selfless, but I think that as the sole purpose is just no longer serving us. And I think my own um, experience as a leader, going from intense insecurity and fear constantly, and hoping that people wouldn't catch me, find out, and then realizing that all of that is unnecessary, that in fact I didn't need to be the smartest person in the room, which something that would never happen in any room. But I didn't need to have the big idea. I didn't need to have the plan. And I remember the panic that I would experience from facing an intractable problem and not knowing the answer, and the fear that I would be found out as a fraud that I was, to recognizing this connection and being able to tap into this resources of the brilliance of the people around me, and walking into a meeting to discuss or find a solution to an intractable problem, that I had no clue how to solve. But it wasn't a problem, because I knew the answer was somewhere in the room, and my job wasn't to make it, to find it, but it was to create the environment where that answer could emerge, and the culture of collaboration that would allow people to sharpen ideas and make sure that they could be quickly implemented. And it was just such a relief. And so for me, that was that progression. That progression came not from any idea that came from the machinations of my mind. That was through paying attention to these deeply spiritual experiences I had with Brooklyn Friends School, and be stepping into this space of really trying to tap into something bigger than me. You know,
yeah.
I don't know what the divine is. I know that there's something out there beyond me. I know the quality of thing when I am able to focus on that and tap into that and let go of my worries about the future and my disappointment with the past. and I can tap into that, I have access to insights that are most definitely beyond my intellect. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think that's the beauty of being conscious enough to know that there's something bigger than me that I can always tap into, that brings me peace, that brings me joy, that brings me, back to love always.
Yes.
And for me, that's a beautiful thing. And that's what I feel my purpose and calling is just to have people remember that, just to have people remember who and what they really are. Peter, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your passion, your purpose, and your light with everyone today. I really thank you.
Really has been an absolute pleasure, Tilde. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to remind everybody before we leave that I've got a boundaries blueprint, a Nobius guide to saying no with confidence. We all need those healthy boundaries. A lot of us are people pleasers, don't know how to keep them up, and we cause our own overwhelm and stress. If that's you, I invite you to join me on September 29th via Zoom. It's happening from 8 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you'd like to join me, please go to the link in my bio where you can easily register. It's a free masterclass. Would love to have you join me.